Hello there and welcome back. In the previous episode we started working on the option to chop down trees using our axe, so we created a script that controls the health of our tree, and we also have the UI for the health bar, and we also have the option to actually hit the tree so it will take damage. But we still have a few things missing, so in this episode we're going to add some animations to the tree, and we're also going to finally destroy the tree and instantiate the logs that we are going to be able to pick up. So in order to actually animate these trees, we need to do a few changes. Let's go over here. Because we do want to animate these trees, but we want the animation to be local, or rather to be relative to the position. Because if we're going to rotate this tree, then it's going to rotate it at this position, and then when we're going to apply it to the different prefabs, they will be rotated in this position, right? So we don't want this to happen. So in order to make these animations relative to the location of the tree, we have to create some kind of wrapper object to each tree, okay? So we're going to create an empty object and we're going to call it tree parent. Okay, and then we're simply going to take our tree and we're going to drag it into this tree parent. Okay, it's very important to make sure that the tree parent itself is at position 0 and the birch tree inside is also at position 0. Okay, and when both of these are at position 0, we're going to create a prefab out of them. Okay, so we go to our prefabs and we're going to drag this tree parent over here. So now that we created this tree parent, we are going to use this tree parent instead of these tree prefabs. Okay, so we need to change all of these trees to become this tree parent. So we're going to delete this and we're going to take all of these trees and simply remove them and then add a few tree parents into our scene. One here, one here. In the next episode, well, before the next episode, I will change a bit the terrain because we are with the same terrain and the same layout for a lot of episodes. So before we start the next episode, I'm going to do some changes. And of course, in your game, you can also play with your own layout, create a map, create some locations, okay? So this is just for testing right now. So now we have all of these trees. Let's place them inside this trees folder, okay? And now we're using this tree parent, and inside we have the birch tree, and inside we have the tree base, okay? So this will be our prefab from now on, so we can delete this birch tree. Let's just leave it for now, okay? And see that everything is working, and then we can delete it. But we're going to use this one. Also make sure that it's really at 0, and then when we double click on it, the birch tree is also at the 0, because we do want the animations to work relative to the location, okay? We can also make this 0, okay? I don't know why it's at 10. And let's go back. So now we're going to create a few animations, and we can go wild with it. We can create very interesting animations, but like I keep mentioning, we are not animation designers, and because this tree, oh, I think it's too much, so let's just place it like that. Also this one. See, and this. So we are not animation professionals, and this birch tree is something we found in a free asset pack, so it doesn't really support different animations. So if we want to create some kind of chopping animation that the tree will fall and break, it's not something we can do with this built model, right? If you want to invest and you want to create your own model in Blender and then have different states of the tree, for example, when it's hit a little bit, so you can really be creative, but we're not going to do it because that's not the point of the series and we don't want to spend too much time on it. We do want to just create some kind of shaking animation, okay, when we hit the tree, And then when the tree is reaching 0 health, it will simply disappear and our prefab, the chop tree prefab, will appear, okay? But you can do whatever you want. You can add other animations if you really want to. So first of all, we're going to select this parent tree and we're going to apply all of our animations to the parent tree, okay? Because we want to change the location and the rotation of this birch tree relative to this parent, okay? So the parent is at 0, 0, 0, well, the prefab, so we also want the animations to be relative, right? We're going to change the birch tree. So it's always going to start at 0, and it doesn't matter where we place it on our map, right? So we're going to select one of these trees, it doesn't matter, and we're going to go to animation, create, and first of all, we want to create an idle animation. So obviously, an idle tree animation is not doing much, right? It's just standing there. Of course, we can add maybe leaves falling down or maybe the foliage swinging around in the wind. But in our case, we're just going to make a still tree, right? But we do need this idle animation because we want to make it the default animation. And then from this default animation, we're going to move to other animations when we trigger them. So we're going to go into our assets, animations, and we're going to call it tree idle, okay? So this tree idle animation will have nothing inside of it. It will simply be an idle animation of this tree standing at this location and rotation, okay? So now that we created this idle animation, we can add another animation. So we're going to create a new clip and we're going to call it tree shake, okay? So we want to shake the tree a little bit each time we hit it. So we're going to create this tree shake animation. And we're going to add a few properties like usual, but this time there's going to be a difference. We're going to click on this add property, but we're not going to add the transform of the parent or the rotation, the position of the parent. We don't want this. We want to change the properties of the child, of this birch tree child, right? So we're going to add properties. And we're going to select this birch tree, okay? So we're going to select it. And inside we're going to select transform and we're going to change the position, okay? So now we have the position of the birch tree. So now we can expand this and make sure that everything is at 0, right? And we can also change it to frames, right? We used the seconds last time, but I think it's just better to explain it with frames. And then we're going to copy these first keyframes. Let's just Control C, and we're going to paste them at the 5 frames, okay? And the difference that we're going to do here is decreasing the X position by 0.01, okay? So we're going to move it just a little bit on the X axis. Then we're going to copy the first one and paste it on the 10 seconds, okay? So it's going to be default, move a little bit, and then come back to the same position. We can also zoom in to see the difference. Now we're going to copy this again, and at the 15, we're going to move it on the X-axis again, but not the same amount we did over here, right? We're going to make it move even less, okay? So the first hit will be the strongest, but then it will just shake, okay? So we want to create this shake effect, 0.002, something like that, okay? So first it will shake hard and then it will just shake a little bit. And then we can just copy this default one and this second one and just, let's copy both of them and just paste them over here, okay? And we can remove this. So the last one was 0 and then this one. So we want to do this 0 again, okay? So over here, we're doing this big move, okay? And then we do these small moves, okay? So it's going to create this kind of shake effect, okay? Here we hit the tree, and here it simply moves after the hit. We can also make it even more shaky. So let's say over here, we're going to move it even less than 2, okay? And maybe also here, less than 2. So it's going to shake even less. Always make sure you select it and it's blue, otherwise it's not going to really change when you do it over here. Okay, so right now it's 0, 0.01, 0, 0.002, 0, 0.2, 0, 0.2, 0, 0.1, 0, 0.1, and 0. Okay, so now if we play it, we're going to see some kind of hit and then just a shake that follows this hit. Okay, so now that we created the animation, we're going to select the tree parent again, and we're going to click on animator. So we're going to see this tree idle. That is the default animation, right? So if this arrow is not pointing at the idle, just do make transition and move it over here, or rather set as layer default state, okay? And then we're going to trigger this shake when we hit the tree, okay? So the idle will be the default, right? But the tree shake will be only when we trigger it. So we're going to create a new trigger over here, and we're going to call it shake. And we're going to create a transition to the shake and then also a transition back to the idle. Now, on the transition from the idle and to the shake, we're going to add a condition, and the condition is this shake trigger, okay? So when we trigger this shake trigger, it's going to run this animation. And on the way back to the idle animation, we don't want to have any conditions again, because we just want this animation to play and then we want it to return to be idle, okay? So the changes we're going to do here, we're going to leave the exit time. We're going to change the exit time to 1 because that's the length of our animation, right? We had 60 frames, so it's about 1 second. And over here, we're going to lower it 0.2. And then on the transition from the idle to the shake, we also need to change a few things. So we're going to disable this has exit time, and we're going to make it 0, okay? So from the idle to the shake, we have this, and we have this shake condition. And from the shake back to the idle, we have no conditions, but we played a bit with the settings. So now that everything is set up over here, we can close the animator and we can open our choppable tree script. So inside the choppable tree, we're going to add an animator, okay? Public animator, animator. And we're going to find it in the start method. So animator transform parent, because we want to get the animator from the parent, right? This choppable tree script is on this tree base, but the animator component is on this tree parent, right? So it's the grandfather of this tree base. So we need to find the parent, and then we need to find the parent of the parent. So inside we do transform parent dot transform parent, right? So we find the parent of the parent and get component animator. So we find the animator from the grandfather, okay? And now we're going to actually trigger this animation. So inside the coroutine, before we reduce the health, we're going to do animator set trigger. And we're going to trigger this shake trigger, okay? So one more thing we need to do to make this animation work is we need to make our trees not static, okay? because we made them static in the beginning, but if they're static, they're not going to be animated. So we need to select this birch tree and we need to remove the static. Yes, change children. Okay. And then we're going to apply and change this prefab. So now if everything is set up correctly, we should hit the tree and the animation should work. Okay. So let's run the game. So now when we approach a tree, we can see this tree health bar, and then when we click, it hits and the tree is shaking, and then we can also see that the health bar goes down. So that's pretty nice. And of course we can come to all of these trees and the animation will be relative to the father, right? So it's not going to move over there. It's going to move in this position. Now we want to take care of destroying the tree when the health reaches 0, okay? So we're going to go to this coroutine inside our choppable tree, and we need to say that after we decrease the health, if the tree health is smaller or equals 0, right? So if it reaches 0, then we're going to run a method called tree is dead or something like that, okay? Then we're going to create this method. And inside, we're actually going to take care of destroying this tree, okay? So let me just type in the code and then I'm going to explain to you everything when I'm done. So let's see what is going on over here. First of all, before we destroy the tree, we're going to get the position of the tree. And the reason is because we want to instantiate this chopped tree prefab instead of this tree when it's destroyed, okay? So let's just copy the name, chopped tree, and inside the script, let's change it over here because we want to instantiate it, okay? So make sure these two names are exactly the same. So we get the position of the tree. Then we actually destroy this tree object, right? Transform parent, game object. We want to destroy this tree parent. Then we also set it to false, right? Because we can't chop it anymore. Next, we also set the selected tree to null and we disable the chop holder UI, okay? So all of this happens when the health of the tree reaches 0. Then we're going to instantiate a game object that is called chop tree from the resources folder, and it's going to be this chop tree that we created in the previous episode. And we want to instantiate it at this position, at the position of the tree before it was destroyed, right? Because that's why we saved the position. And we also instantiate it at this rotation. It's the default rotation because we did not change it, okay? If you want to instantiate the logs in some kind of rotation, just change it over here. So this is what we're doing over here. So now when we destroy this tree, it should simply get destroyed and this chopped tree prefab should appear instead of this tree, okay? So let's see if everything is working. Okay, so now we can approach the tree and let's see, we're going to hit it a few times. And when it reaches 0, it will instantiate the logs. Okay, so now it's not perfect, you can see that, because we do want the stump part to be sitting on the ground and we do want these to fall, but we don't see the stump anywhere. So what probably happened is that it instantiated it under the ground, right? So it's simply under the ground and that's why we don't see it. So you really need to play a bit with the positioning because you will have other models and you really need to understand just the way it works. So if you have another model, you need to make sure that it stays at 0, okay? When you instantiate it, this one and also the tree prefab 0, 0, but when you actually instantiate it, you still need to play a bit with the values, because sometimes it can instantiate it be below the ground or maybe somewhere else. So you need to know how to change these things. So that's a good thing that it happened, because now we can see the way we fix it. So we go back into our choppable tree, and over here, when we instantiate this chop tree game object, we are not going to provide it with this tree position this way, right? The exact tree position, but we're going to create a new vector instead, and we're going to pass in the individual axes. Okay, so tree position X, tree position Y, and tree position Z. And the way we're doing it is because now we can have actually some control, because if we saw that the tree was instantiated a bit lower than what we wanted, we can just increase the y-axis a little bit. So we're going to do something like +5, okay? So it will instantiate the tree a bit upper than the ground, okay? Or I think 5 it's too much, so maybe something like 1, okay? So we simply take all of these positions that we had, the tree position, but we want to also add 1 to the y-axis, okay? So we want to make it a bit higher than it was before, okay? So we want to instantiate this prefab just a little bit upper on the y-axis. So this way we can actually control these values. So if you want to move it a bit to the right or to the left, you can change this. If you want to move it in the Z direction, you can just add over here, okay? And of course, the same way you can control the rotation. So let's save this. And now we can go. So now let's hit the tree a few times. And there is some kind of little bug that we need to take care of, because if we just click a lot of times, it will deplete the health and the axe is not really going to move, but we're going to take care of that. So now when we reach 0, you can see that the stump was instantiated over here and these logs just fell, and that's exactly what I wanted to happen, okay? You could create some kind of animation of the tree just falling, and when it reaches the ground, it will disappear and these logs will appear. But this model is not optimized for these things, because if you actually rotate this model, you're going to see that it's hollow inside, okay? So it's not going to look good. But in your case, you can play with it, you can invest some time into it if you really want to make it look good, okay? But for us, it's good because now we are going to be able to pick up these logs, but this tree stump will stay over here. So think about it, we have a big forest of trees, and then we start to chop them all down, and then we are only left with these stumps, and then we can see that we actually chopped everything off, and we can still see these stumps. So these stumps will stay here, and of course, it's not really logical that we have these flowers over here. So maybe later we can make sure that we place these trees only in spots that don't have any flowers. But these are small things that we can just take care of later, okay? But that's the point of this animation. And the reason that these logs are falling is just because the way we structure them, okay? We placed this one on the ground, so it will just stay on the ground and not move. But these ones, we added a rigid body to them, so they act with physics, right? Based on physics laws. And we made this little offset over here. So when we instantiate them, they just start falling, okay? And that's exactly what we wanted to happen. So now we want to make these logs to actually be pickable, right? The same way we pick up these stones and sticks, we want to make these logs pickable. So to do that, we're going to drag one of these prefabs into the scene so we can actually change them and then save them. So we're going to expand this, and let's close these things over here. So now we're going to open these logs, And we're going to add the interactable object script on both of them. So interactable object, and also this one, interactable object, and we're going to give them a name, log, and also this one, log, okay? And that's standard things we do with each item that we want to be able to pick up, right? We have this on the stones and on the sticks, right? If we go to our prefabs, we have it on the stone, we have this interactable object and the stick. So any item that you want to be able to pick up, you need to add this script. And we also have these two box colliders. So now we go back to our chopped tree and we want to add an extra box collider, okay? So we don't have any box colliders right now. Well, I think let's go. Oh yeah, we do have. We have this capsule collider. Okay, so the capsule collider will simply be the outline of these logs. So it will know how to collide with things and we won't be able to pass through it, things like that. So we have this base capsule collider. And also when we want to pick up the item, this is the area we need to point at. But we want to add another collider to indicate the zone that we need to stand in to be able to pick up the item. And we have this with all the other items, right? If we go to our, let's see, item, stone, we can see that we have this small collider that will simply wrap the stone itself, but then we have this entire zone. So only when we stand inside the zone, we are going to be able to pick up this item, right? We don't want to pick up the item when we stand far off because it's not realistic. So we're going to add a box collider to these logs. So we have this default one and we want to add one more. This time it will be a box collider and we're going to make it is trigger, okay? So now if we click on our log, we can see this area and we want to make it a bit larger, so something like 20, 20, and 5, okay? And we're going to do the same thing over here. Box collider, 20, 25, and is trigger. Another thing we need to do is to add the pickable tag to both of them, okay? So we have this pickable tag on all of our pickable items. So pickable, and also this one, pickable. So now we took care of these logs, so we can click on the chopped tree and we can apply it to all these prefabs. So now we can also remove this chopped tree, okay? And if we go back to the resources and we click on the chopped tree, we can see that everything is already saved over here, okay? So now we're going to create another resource, like we have the stone, the stick, and the axe. So these are the representations of the items inside our inventory. They have a sprite, they have this drag and drop script, the inventory item script. So we're going to simply copy this stone, okay? Control D. Okay, so with Control D, it will simply duplicate this stone, and we're going to rename it to log. And then we're going to do a few changes inside this log. First of all, we want to set it to be trashable. Well, yes. Consumable, no. We don't want it to be consumable. Is equipable, no. So all of these are not relevant. Also, the effects are not relevant. And we're going to rename it to log. And we're going to give it some kind of description. So something like, this piece of raw wood only looks heavy. It is actually light weight and can be carried around with ease. And we can even go further. It is also the weakest among the different types of wood. So this is just some basic information we can provide to the player, okay? And then in the functionality, as a common and basic material. It can be used to craft various items, although only after being processed. Okay, process this. Let's see. Processed, okay? I hope this is the right way to type it, okay? I'm going to Google that later. So these are just some things that we can add to make it a bit more interesting, you know, for the lore, for explaining to the player what we can do with this item. And we also, of course, want to change the sprite. So we go over here to the source image and we're going to select some kind of log. I have something in mind, WD, I think this one, okay? And this is the way it's going to appear in our inventory. So now we have this item and we can actually pick up the item, but we also want to add something else before we test out the game again, okay? So we want to also decrease the calories, right? We talked about it. We want to decrease the calories when we do all kinds of physical things. So when we walk around, the calories go down. When we craft things, we also want to decrease the calories. We still did not do it, but later we're going to do it. And when we chop trees and do all kinds of physical labor, we want to decrease the calories because it's something that will add to the survival aspect of the game. And we need to think about these things. So do we really want to spend all of our energy on chopping trees all day long and things like that? So to do that, we're going to go back into our choppable tree script, okay? And over here, we're going to add a new property, public float, calories spent chopping wood. Okay, of course, later we can place it in another place, but it's just going to be the value of the amount of calories that will be spent when we actually chop wood, because we don't want to hard code it inside the code. Each time that we want to change it in the future, we can just change it from here. So the initial value will be something like 20 calories every hit, okay? And then we can simply change it from here and we don't need to hard code it into our code. So now we're going to go over here when we actually hit the tree, okay? And we're going to change the calories of the player. So player state instance current calories minus equals calories spent chopping wood, okay? And now if we save everything and everything is good, let's run the game. So now we can go over here and also notice the calories when we hit the tree. They now go down 20 each time. And also the tree is getting hit, and when it reaches 0, it disappears and these logs fall to the ground. So we have one log missing. Okay, it fell down. So you can play with it, make it look better. I'm also going to make it look better later so they don't just fall from the sky. So now we can point at these logs, and the same way like we had with these sticks and stones, we can click and the log will be picked up, and then inside our inventory we have this log. And I see already that the functionality is not completely over here because it simply cuts it away. So we need to fix that later, maybe make the font smaller. But we can pick up these logs and each tree will give us 2 logs, and then we're going to be able to process these logs later. We're going to have some kind of processing category that we're going to process these logs into planks or something like that. And then we're going to use the planks, for example, to build houses or things like that, okay? Now there is one problem that I want to fix, and if you're going to hit these trees, you can hit them and it will look fine. But if you start go wild and just click away, you can see that the health goes down faster than the axe is actually hitting, okay? So it's something that we don't want to happen. We want the health to go down only when the animation actually reaches the tree, okay? We don't want to abuse it and just deplete the health without the animation is actually finished, okay? So inside the equipable item script, okay? Equipable item, we're going to create a method called void get hit, okay? So we basically just want to trigger this code, but using the animation, and it's actually something we can do. We can add these methods to the actual animations at specific points in the animation. So we're going to take all of this, okay, we still want to leave this here because we do want to trigger the animation, but we're going to copy, well actually cut all of this and place it inside the get hit. So we're not going to trigger it inside the update, but we're going to trigger it using the animation, okay? We're going to trigger this get hit method. So when we click on the mouse and everything is fine and we can actually click, then it will trigger this animation. But when the animation reaches a certain point in the timeline, we are going to fire this method, okay? So then it's going to find the tree, and if the tree is not null, so we actually point at a tree, it's going to hit the tree. And then inside this choppable tree, it's going to trigger this coroutine, and all of this will happen, okay? So to trigger this method, where was it? Equipable. To trigger this method from the animation, we're going to go into the animation, we're going to select the axe model, okay? And we're going to go into this animation window and we're going to select axe hit. So now if we play the animation, we can see that over here is the part that the axe actually hits the tree, right? So we're going to select this frame and we're going to add this add event, okay? So we click on this add event and we'll put a little marker over here, and then we're going to select this marker, and over here on top we can see a function window. So we're going to select this, let's see, equipable. Oh, I think that, yes, we need to make it public. Okay, we need to make it public. So now we go back, we select the axe, and we select the hit, and then we select this little marker, and then we can select this get hit method. So basically we can trigger, we can call different methods on specific frames of the animation. So if the last frame was the frame the axe hit the tree, we should put it over here. But in our case, this is the frame that the axe is hitting the tree, and then it goes back, okay? So we want to run this method on this point, okay? And of course, we want to click on the axe model and save the prefab so we don't forget about it. So now it's going to run this method when the axe is reaching this part, okay? So because we are actually telling it at which frame to hit the tree, we no longer need to use a coroutine over here. Because we use the coroutine to make the animation to be in sync with the hitting. But now that we actually told this method to run at the specific frame in the animation, we don't need this coroutine anymore. We don't need this delay anymore, okay? So we're going to select all of this code except of this thing, and then Control X to cut it, and we're going to paste it over here inside the get hit, okay? Instead of this coroutine. Okay, so we have the trigger, we have the health, we have the changing of the health, of the calories, and we have this if statement, and then we simply remove the coroutine, okay? So if the tree is dead, it's going to run this. If not, it's simply going to decrease the calories and it's going to hit the tree, okay? So now everything should work. Let's just go save this. Let's go to equipable item. Okay, let's see if everything is working. So now we go back here and let's run the game. So now if we come to one of these trees and we click on the left mouse button, it's going to reduce it. And now if we're going to try to abuse it and just click away, it's not going to work. It's just going to decrease the health each time the axe is actually hitting the tree. Okay, and why does it fall from that far away? I want to fix it. Let's fix it together. Okay, so I just played with it a bit and it's just because both of these are bouncing one from another. Okay, so we don't have to instantiate them this way. We can have some kinds of fixes, but let's just make this one a bit rotated, okay? And this one as well. And this one, we're going to move it over here. So now let's run and hope that it's going to solve the problem. Okay, it's good enough. Okay, it will still bounce, so you can play with it. And now we have these logs and we can pick them up and everything is fine. So right now we created this option to chop down trees, and all of these small fine-tunings, these are things that we can spend hours and hours on, and it's something that you as a developer need to take care of. It's not something that we can possibly cover in these series, okay? So each time you play around and you feel like something is not right, you can just try and fix it. So right now we can chop down trees, we can collect logs. Later we're going to be able to use these logs to craft all kinds of things. And that's a really nice feature to have in our game. And I still don't know what will be the next thing we're going to work on, if it's going to be something small or something big, but there's still a lot of things to add to our game. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're still not subscribed. It will help me a lot. And please leave a like. It will also help me a lot. So see you next time.